Bowser was asked about the deal coming together and kind of the timeline of all of this, which is something I asked, or I'll ask Van Stone coming up in a little bit as well. But here is the mayor of the District of Columbia, he said this morning on the Sports Junkies.
Well, let me just say, we never stopped talking to Monumental. We never stopped negotiating, and we never stopped making our deal an even better deal. So I would say that the culmination of the signing that we celebrated last night, probably started 2 weeks after they're announced. The start, I shouldn't say the culmination, the commencement. We started paving that road 2 weeks or 3 weeks after their announcement about Virginia. So we never, gave up on keeping our teams. We focused on making our deal better, and that's the result.
The politics here were incredibly sloppy, and that sometimes is how things get done. The nature of politics is sometimes politics looks a lot like business, and in business, how the sausage gets made can be ugly, but the nature of politics is it's also public. Politics by nature is public policy. Politics by nature is out in the open, and there's a level of transparency because the people doing it are not private business owners. It's elected officials who want their work out for public consumption because it's their resume that is going to ultimately get them reelected, which, is what most of them care about, is keeping their jobs, just like most regular people in private business keep their jobs. But I do think that for me, this is a personal opinion. Like, I'm very outcomes driven when it comes to my politicians. I want people who at the end of the day get stuff done. And specifically the things that I want to see them get done, which involves being informed and knowing what that actually looks like in the first place, which is, never mind. I'm not going to go on that rant right now. Point is, Mayor Bowser here took some level of risk, I think, in slow playing and not being urgent enough on the front end. But ultimately it works out on the back end, and she and the DC City Council kept doing the work of putting forth a vision and sweetening their offer and keeping the relationship alive. And knowing that Ted Leonsis, despite the fact that he had a big press conference and announcement with Glenn Youngkin, didn't actually have a signed piece of paper that committed them to doing anything. That, of course, led to some very difficult conversations along the way, and Bowser was asked about those and answered this morning on the Junkies.
We've had difficult conversations, and we were extremely disappointed in their decision. But then we had to go to work. I represent 700,000 people. I represent a downtown that needs its destination, it needs its major anchor, and it needs it to be improved. And that's why we've been willing to be partners in the construction of a new Capital One arena. So people tell me sometimes, you're cool, or you don't get too excited, or you don't get too down. I try to stay right in the middle, even keeled, so that I can do my work. And that's what we did. We set out to, keep our teams and to really demonstrate that Monumental is an important company in the district, and they can be a key part of the next iteration of Chinatown.
And they will be, because they now own an incredibly large part of it. Part of the deal that goes down here gives Monumental and Leonsis control of the Gallery Place portion of Chinatown as well. So that building adjacent where the bowling alley currently is, and where there used to be a lot of shops and restaurants, but now there is the Haagen-Dazs even still open? Anthony, do we know, is the Haagen-Dazs still open across from District E?
That I don't think so. I think they have something else there.
I think you're right.
They have I don't know what it's called. I don't think the Haagen-Dazs is there though.
I think you're right, but there might be still a Haagen-Dazs. Anyway, the point is there used to be a Haagen-Dazs.
Yeah.
The lactose intolerant one on the show does not currently know if the Haagen-Dazs is still available. But there is a bowling alley upstairs. There used to be a movie theater, and now it is mostly just empty space. And it is available for the folks at Monumental to reshape and reimagine and I think some of that will go to things that they need on the back end, but some of that stuff will open up space on the front end, if you will, fan-facing stuff, because they don't need as much storage underneath the arena. Some of that space will just turn into stuff. There's also, I was reading one article, I think it was in The Athletic today, but who knows, I've read so much, that could ultimately become the Wizards practice facility, is that space just could become the Wizards spot in the same way that the Capitals practice facility is housed in this big giant building in Arlington that's otherwise mixed use and has all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's literally in a mall. So you could have something like that down at Gallery Place where the Wizards are going to both practice and play. So there's tons of options here, but ultimately it's also going to be on Ted to work with other business owners, and all is apparently good with Jose Andres and in the restaurant community after this news, to build out that space and reimagine it as somewhere that people want to go. Now, I will also pause here to say this. If the teams stink, it doesn't matter. And I hate that is the case. But because we are now so focused on these sports teams, and, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but it's not going to matter 100 nights a year, right? Because if people don't want to go to the games and all that other stuff, and the idea of like, oh, we're going to a game and it's an event and it's cool because the Wizards are good or the Caps are really good, that stuff, you're not going to want to go hang out at those places. Even if you go to the game, it's not like an event. It's not a thing that people do. It's just going to be like, yeah, we went to the game and then we left after the third quarter. You want it to be a thing that's like a huge deal for a night out that people are genuinely pumped to go to and excited about. And the winning will help a lot with that. But that said, one thing that Ted pointed out the other night, they just had their biggest concert there ever. Like the Luke Bryan show the other night at Capital One Arena had almost 21,000 people, which is one of the biggest concerts that Capital One, if not the single biggest concert by some measures. I think merchandise sales, it was the most money ever spent on a concert at Capital One Arena. So there are going to be other things there, other events, and especially once they get through the renovations, that I think people will have these nights out, and having the options to be out on a plaza or to be in a restaurant or to be wherever and having a better experience while you're there can help revitalize that part of town. And if you do that, the tax revenue from that should trickle down to other parts of the district. That's at least how the people on that side will tell you that it works. Other people will tell you that's not how it works on the economist side, but we'll let those people fight about the math another time. Jim Van Stone, we know where he sits. He's the president of Monumental Sports Entertainment, their business operations. He will be with us coming up at 4:30, but you'll hear more from the mayor, including how this affects the pursuit of the RFK site for the Commanders, next on the Team 980. Monumental Sports President Jim Van Stone joins us coming up at the bottom of the hour. Jim, of course, the president of business operations. He's been quite busy over the last 3.5 months getting this deal with D.C. done as things fell apart in Virginia. We'll talk about it all coming up at 4:30. Right now, though, more from Mayor Bowser this morning on the Sports Junkies. And there's a big question. There's a big, giant question that is looming over all of this, that frankly, as much as so many people care about this without any other implications, the care is high for the Wizards, high for the Capitals, high for the city, high for the surrounding areas. This matters to us all in one way or another. The Commanders and the pursuit of RFK is a gigantic question that looms over all of this. What does this move mean for that? We will get there before the end of this segment, a.k.a. before 4:30. But was there ever a consideration from Mayor Bowser of just being like, no, y'all left, we're done here? Any consideration, he said, from pulling the offer after? And again, remember, Ted has the agreement with Virginia that leaks out. Bowser then puts out $500 million, being like, okay, well, this is what you're leaving. Did she ever be like, especially once things started falling apart from Virginia, being like, we're not giving you anything? Here's Bowser this morning on the Junkies.
I did. I absolutely did. But we're actually in the time frame for a decision that I contemplated back in December. I thought that the issue had to be resolved by the time I submitted a budget, and so we're in that space. And I think, though, that our policymakers and our team were united in saying that we can get this done. So it was important to keep our deal on the table. And, people have even said to me today, you should pull it, don't give him anything. He's in a tight spot, but that's not what the downtown needs. The downtown needs a renovated Cap One Arena.
So there you go. I think that's interesting. There's only so much ever that anyone's going to trust politicians with their word. It is a good story, but it also seems like a very plausible one, if I'm being honest. That there's just often with public funding and public financing logistics. Like this is kind of where the timeline exists for the Commanders as well, as we'll circle back around to them and what Bowser had to say in a moment. But they're in a weird spot right now because they're fighting to get this land and some of the funding and stuff and all of that through the federal government. And a lot of stuff tends to happen at the federal level when they do their budgets and the omnibus deals that, unfortunately, in my opinion, are the way that typically the government is funded and other stuff gets done, is giant pork barrel spending where a bunch of unrelated things just get thrown in. But at the end of the day, people get what they want because people aren't going to vote no on a bill that's funding the government and keeping us functioning as a federal government, which is a lot of stuff. It's not just like Congress goes to work. It's every federal agency, which does more than I think people realize around everything in our lives. Like, they're not going to shut down the government over this one hobby horse thing that a senator wanted to get passed in their state. And so every senator, every representative is trying to throw their thing in there, and some get tossed out, and there's enough people to keep it out of the bill, and others get in. And the Commanders have consistently, on top of trying to do things in a standalone process, they're trying every avenue, which is good on their part, have tried to lump some of the RFK stuff into those omnibus bills. But the way government is working right now is they've passed a bunch of what they call them CRs, continuing resolutions, to keep the government funded short-term. And so instead of this happening in the way that it normally does at the end of each calendar year, which is also the government fiscal year, there's like budget things happening every 3-4 months. And ultimately what happens is they're putting together budgets that are scraping by and buying more time. So like right now they just passed one that the budget will fund the government through like September. So it just keeps getting pushed back. And that's why the Commanders and Bowser and the people working on that on the DC side are also trying to put forth a standalone, like, hey, we're not trying to just lump this in with a bunch of other stuff. Like, can we vote on this specific issue? And they have actually made some progress on some of that, which leads us to, does this new deal for Monumental Sports affect the Washington Commanders' pursuit of RFK?
Well, the two have never been related. I have been working on securing the land at RFK since I became mayor in 2015. And it is important for the district to control its own destiny. It is important for the district to have control of that underutilized land that is on the Monumental axis. It's on the Anacostia River. And it has served us as a sports center for decades. And so that's our focus. We're going to get control of the land. And it's no secret to anybody that I think D.C. teams should play in D.C.
So this jives with my thoughts on this. There's a lot that's unsaid there, but I'm glad that Bowser says that. And we're going to talk to Ben Standig about this more at 5 o'clock, who definitely knows more about this on some fronts in terms of reporting on it over the last 24 hours than I do. But here's the thing that I will posit that I think does run counter to what some of the people reporting on this have said. So I'm going to put out my theory, and you can take it for what it's worth. I think that, one, what Mayor Bowser said is correct. It is vitally important that the district control its own land. There are certain things in every state, every jurisdiction in the country that is considered federal land for whatever reason, like national parks and such. And the federal government can absolutely have control over those types of things. Fine. But there is such an outsized amount of land in the District of Columbia that is controlled by the federal government for no good reason. You want the Capitol and the grounds of the National Mall and all that kind of stuff? Fine. That's where our national government's funding is housed. But like the RFK site, there's no reason that has to be controlled by the federal government and is locked up. And by the way, we don't even have the power of a state level government to fight that fight because of home rule and all these things that are very specific to the District of Columbia. So I think it's as a citizen of the district, like I want control of that land where I can vote for people who ultimately decide what to do with it, not someone in Idaho or Minnesota or Wisconsin or Florida or Georgia or anywhere else that has a senator and we don't, and they get to decide what happens across town from me in my neighborhood. Or in my greater neighborhood, so to speak, in D.C. So that's thing one. So that is pretty straightforward. As far as this actually going to be a football stadium and a sporting complex, this does make it more challenging, and I think that's what Ben and others have posited, and we'll get more details out of Ben on this at 5 o'clock, because you've now taken $515 million of city money and giving it to Ted Leonsis to redo Capital One Arena with the hope that it will generate back that revenue and more in the long term, that there's an investment. But up front, like how much more money and how much more appetite for money is there when DC's got all the problems that DC's got? The reality is, I think this can still get done because I think that Josh Harris and company might just foot the bill. It's going to ultimately depend on that. If you're Josh Harris and you can either be at RFK and pay for it yourself or get $1 billion from, or $800 million or whatever it is from Maryland and stay in Landover, how much is it worth to you? And again, this is not going to be just Josh Harris. He's got a ton of minority partners who are worth a ton of money. If they want to do this, they've got the cash. Or they can generate the cash. They've got the net worth. They've got the wealth. And so I think that is the key question, is not like, will the city pay for it? Maybe the city will be able to come up with something. Maybe they can, do some kind of design where there's no money on the front end, whatever it is. And some of the revenue generated goes back to Harris or whoever fronts it. Like, I don't know how that works. I'm not an economist. I'm not someone who works on economic planning. That's way beyond my knowledge scope. But I do think that if they can unlock the land, that the Harris ownership group would have a serious conversation about, all right, how much is it worth to us? How much more are we worth if we are at RFK? does that close the financial gap? And also, if we're so concerned about the fan experience and the history of the team and all these things that we tell ourselves that we are, is that enough to say, let's get out of Landover? Thanks, Westmore. You've been a great partner. We still will, who knows, maybe they even move the practice facility there, depending on what happens in Virginia, because I do think they want to sell that land out in Ashburn and make, $200, $300, $400 million off of it, depending on when they sell it and how tech stocks and all those things are doing at the time because of the fiber wiring out there. But end of the day, if they make the determination that it's either better for the brand or better for the bottom line to spend the money to be at RFK versus taking the money from Maryland and staying in Landover, then it just comes down to whether or not they can actually get the land and the permits, not whether the city will give them money, because the city might not actually be able to give them money. And that's how this does affect the potential for a move for the Commanders to RFK. Again, more on that with Ben Standig coming up at 5 o'clock. But next, we will talk to Monumental Sports President of Business Operations, Jim Van Stone. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we stream live on YouTube at the Team 980, where you see, if you're watching, Jim Van Stone, the president of Monumental Sports, back with us here on the show. Jim, welcome back. A little bit of news that I guess we can talk about.
Well, you know what? First off, thanks, Greg. We appreciate it. Love all the great work that you do, and thanks for the coverage of our teams and our venues and everything from that standpoint. But it's been a busy 24 hours, to say the least. So, I think we're excited about the news yesterday, and the release from the city last night on the press announcement. And, it's a great day for the city of DC, and it's a great day for us at Monumental. So we're excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say the last time we talked was shortly after the Virginia announcement. And, you said a lot of the same things as I would imagine you would, and Ted and everybody saying like, hey, this agreement with Virginia or whatever we wanted to call the thing at the time, I forget the word that was being used, was like, this is a great day for the DMV. This is a great day for Monumental. It's a great day for the Wizards, Caps, our fans, etc. From that day to this day, obviously, a lot has happened. I guess my first question for you would be, if you think back to that day, like, was this day something that was still a possibility, or for you guys, like, had the door closed and you were on Virginia and like, did you even think that a day like this could be in your future?
No, I think one of the great things about yesterday's press event, and Ted and the mayor were very clear with it. I mean, even after the announcement of Potomac Yard, we continued to have conversations with the district. I mean, this has been our home for the last 27 years. The memories that we've created in this venue in this neighborhood, I think are second to none. I mean, I think we all go back to the Stanley Cup win and the sea of red that was outside of there. So the conversations always really continued. And, the core of what we needed to really transform the fan experience was more space. And that was the heart of, what we were able to accomplish over the last couple of months with the city. And, this $200,000 square feet of additional space really allows us to transform everything about the building, and that was an exciting moment for us. And, at the end of the day, I mean, the one thing that's great about the district and where we are is that you can't change our zip code. I mean, we're a mile from the Hill, mile from the White House. I mean, it's iconic, location with 3 blocks from the mall. So, the conversations were continuing, from that standpoint. And, at the end of the day, I mean, I think every party is really glad that we were able to come together yesterday with this special announcement.
So I guess the question would then be like, was this all politics kind of, where it's like, if you have the big event, you think like, oh, this is done in Virginia. We quickly learn like, no, there's a lot of work there. Obviously there was some level of confidence, but from the governor's office and from your side that was going to get done. But was that ultimately like a negotiating tip to get DC to the table? Like, I'm just trying to understand the logistics of how this goes here.
I don't think it was anything from that standpoint. I think one of the things that's valuable about these sports and entertainment properties that we have is they are really desirable for, all jurisdictions. So, I mean, I feel like we've gotten so much love over the years from the entire DMV. I mean, the district certainly was key. I mean, for the state of Virginia, and a big credit to the governor and really the mayor of Alexandria, Mayor Wilson, they were committed to really seeing and identifying how important sports teams are to their community and stuff like that. So they went all in as we did in the conversations. I mean, but it's the same thing when you look at Maryland. I mean, what Governor Wes Moore is doing in that state with the Orioles and the Ravens. I mean, the commitment of some of these jurisdictions to sports teams and how valuable they are to their local, marketplace, I think really spoke volumes in the process. So there wasn't anything that wasn't sincere about the efforts in Potomac Yard. I mean, we did think that was a game-changing opportunity for our fans. And, we're all about the memories business. I mean, we want to create memories for, families and our fans and, the people that we partner with from that standpoint. So, we thought that was going to be, a game-changing opportunity. And then things started to really to come together with the district in the conversations. And, I think relationships in business are so critical. And, we had great relationships with some of the key decision makers in Virginia, but we had really great relationships with, the council and the mayor's office here in DC. So at the end, I mean, we were able to, I think, achieve a lot of good things. And I think we've got a great roadmap ahead of us of what we're going to build here in this new building.
Jim Van Stone, the president of Monumental Sports, is with us here on the Hoffman Show. One more question kind of on the process, then I would love to talk more about the space and the use, because that was some of my big questions yesterday. And, well, you're the guy with the answers, Jim. So let's get to that in a second. Sure. Everyone's playing nice yesterday, and it used to mention these relationships go back a long way. When you have long-term relationships of any kind, but especially in business, they're going to have the highs, the lows, all that. I think the most contentious point probably with the district and Monumental is when Mayor Bowser goes in the Post and writes the op-ed. Can you take us, now that we're all at a happy ending, behind the scenes of what it's like to read the mayor kind of reading the company, the Riot Act in the local newspaper, which happens to be, by the way, the Washington Post, not just any local newspaper?
So I will say when you're in any of these type of conversations, the emotions really take, precedent over everyone. I mean, I think, what, we were emotional during a lot of the conversations. I mean, the mayor was sharing her piece. I mean, at the end of the day, I think what she wrote in that op-ed was that she really cared about our teams and this marketplace and doing what's right for the city from that standpoint. So I don't think we regret, any opinion that anyone had in the process. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about finding a solution. And I think we found a solution, but, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say we had emotions internally here at Monumental. So, I mean, there's definitely, some of the pieces, but at the core of, I think, what I mentioned earlier, it's about relationships and keeping those lines of communication open. And, that was the process throughout. I think with both parties, we were all collectively, involved in really productive dialogue. We don't read a lot. I read and follow social media myself, but I don't buy into a lot of, stuff that's reported out there because a lot of it's not factual. I mean, to me, the factual media is, what you do and what, the TV networks do and what we really, share with the overall group. But, there's a lot of pain that comes with some of these things. So, but I think at the end of the day, we were able to work through it. And, I think we've got a great outcome here. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of emotions that go into this whole process.
Well, one more follow up then quickly on that. Whether it's via callers to our shows or some of the social media or fans protesting, like you obviously heard loudly from a lot of fans about how much this hurt. And it was something that Ted has said caught him by surprise. How much did that matter to you guys? That if you're in the memories business, that's got to matter. So how did that impact this process and the ultimate shift back into the district and the desire to get it done in DC?
So, at the end of the day, we want to do right by our fans. And I think for us, it really was about the overall experience of coming to live events. We wanted that to be transformational. We really focus on fan innovation, fan engagement from that standpoint. So at the core of what we wanted to do, we wanted to make sure wherever we landed, we had the ability to really transcend that, versus any other experience that anyone ever had before. So, that was a big part of it. The emotions of people, we had a lot of people that were in favor. We had a lot of people that were, on the opposite side, so I think we took everyone's opinion seriously, in that process. But at the core of what we wanted to do is we want people to come to these venues, be here all day, experience an incredible live event, stay afterwards, have the time of their life and have a great memory. And I think we finished, in a pretty good landing. But yeah, these things are emotional and, fans speak from their heart. And you know what? I can't put, any type of, not premium value on what those comments are from that end. But yeah, no, it was definitely, I think for the parties that were involved in the negotiations, it was, really tough. But I think for the fans too, and the unknown of that was really tough. I mean, you have families that grew up coming to Capital One Arena. And you know what, them thinking that, hey, we're taking that away and you know what, all those memories, I mean, that's tough to hear, so I think, at the end, you want to do what's right for the customers. And, I think we landed in a really good space.
Jim Van Stone, president on the business side of Monumental Sports with us here on the Team 980. Okay, so let's get to what ultimately happens here. You mentioned space. That was the big appeal in Virginia because there was this big, massive amount of space. There's obviously not a lot of space in the district, but there is some. What are you guys getting and what do you plan to do with it, I guess, is the most basic version of that question.
So, it's funny. We talked about Potomac Yard and being 10 to 12 acres of property. I look at Capital One Arena. We have 5 acres of land right now. 200,000 square feet rather, is an additional 5 acres. So we're approaching close to, what we looked at. That's not including the practice facility for the Wizards, which was a big part of, the negotiation with the city on the expansion of that. I mean, we want the best in class NBA practice facility for our athletes. I mean, it's critical and it's important. That's not inclusive of this. We are going to basically look at this as a brand new building within the 4-wall infrastructure and the ability to expand into Gallery Place. That changes the ingress and egress for our clients. That opens up really many more entries into the building. It allows us to pick up a lot of social spaces, a lot of culinary spaces, food and beverage spaces, places for people to mingle so they don't feel on top of each other in a tight concourse. We never had that ability. We think the alleyway and on 6th and 7th allows us to really transition into a brand new entry point. Imagine an overhang, roof of people coming in, staying out of the inclement weather, and then they go into a new pavilion, that could be the gallery place pavilion. I think looking at everything from really event floor level to the ceiling is what's going to be important for us. We do get a lot of demand for people that want really unique seating experiences and premium seating. So we're going to expand that portfolio for us. And we're going to add in premium seating for people in the 4 to 6 to 8 seat range instead of just doing, a suite. We're going to look at, transformational opportunities for guests that are sitting on the 100 level and the 400 level. I mean, they don't have destination spots. The concourses are tight. So, this really allows us to flex out in the building. And then some of that 200,000 square feet, Craig, will probably be repurposed. Some of it will be back of house, but that opens up spaces that we're using for back of house now that have better proximity to, the seating bowl and the concourses and everything from that end. So, at the end of the day, the exterior of the building is going to look completely different. And we want it to be a destination place. We are going to be the engine that basically, really re-energizes, the Penn Quarter district and the Penn Quarter neighborhood. So, we're fully focused on that, and, it's going to be a pride moment. Now, don't get me wrong. The next 3 years, part of my dust. I mean, we're going to have probably construction that's happening and, things that are probably behind the scenes work being done. But we may have some summers where, the building's a little bit more quiet, compared to, normal concert seasons or something like that. So we'll have a 3-year process of the renovation. But I do think what we're looking at is a brand new building, and that's the way we're going to approach the project.
So just to clarify, this, when you talk about the extra 200,000 square feet, that is the gallery place, kind of, I guess, mall-ish, whatever you want to call that spot, right next to Capital One Arena. Currently, District D is operating there. You guys, obviously, I think that also is that where the new Monumental Sports Network stuff
actually,
is, or that's across the street?
Network, we refer to this office building as Capital One North. It's actually right next door. It's not part of Gallery Place.
Okay.
But we just opened up a $60 million new broadcast studio, which is state of the art. And, honestly, it's about entertaining the 20,000 people that come to the events. But that broadcast network for us, I mean, we're in 3.2 million households of people watching our games. I mean, it's best in class, that studio. So, but that's next door in a different office building. Okay. So, but this really allows us to expand in the Gallery Place. There's a lot of retail in there. It picks up the alleyway, which is located right now between the arena and Clyde's. It's the other part of the alleyway on the 6th Street side. So, it definitely gives us a lot more room to expand the footprint, change the entire arrival, but also more importantly, open up space on the concourses and the multi-levels to change the fans' experience when they're not sitting in their seats.
Are there arenas specifically that you guys have said, like, I would really like that at that place as you've traveled around the NBA and the NHL?
Yeah, I have a couple of highlights. I think Madison Square Garden, and that's a 100-year-old building, and that is gorgeous. They did an amazing job on that. It's a completely transformed experience. I think that's an amazing building. I think what they just completed up in Philadelphia, Wells Fargo Center, is one of the best renovations I've ever seen. And we use the word renovation. A renovation sounds like I'm doing something to my house. I mean, it's a transformation. It's basically a new building. From a premium standpoint, we love the Chase Center in San Francisco where the Warriors play. And I think we're all excited about seeing, the Intuit Dome, that's being built right now for the Clippers. So I think there's going to be pieces of elements of many of these buildings that we're going to, hopefully build into the inspiration of how we rebuild Capital One Arena. So, but there's a lot of great buildings out there. And, I think at the end of this, I mean, we want a building that's going to, be transformational. So I think that's what we're going to focus on building out.
Yeah, I think the emphasis on space is very interesting to me. I was just in Indy for the NFL Combine, but we went to a Pacers game, and Gainbridge Fieldhouse has, like, it just feels so open. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is really different. And hearing you talk about the space, I'm hoping that obviously is something that will have that same feeling. Because you're right, like the concourses, there's a crowded nature to it. And whether you're there for a game, a concert, whatever, which in some ways feels like an old school sporting event, but it's 2024 and it's not old school anymore.
It's funny. You mentioned Gainbridge. I was there a couple weeks back for the NBA All-Star weekend.
Yep.
And the amount of social spaces there and the amount of bars that people could congregate in and get together as friends, and socialize, I thought was amazing. We don't have that footprint right now. This will enable us to do some of those things. And then I get back to my seat as quick as I can to watch the great action that's happening, on the quarter of the ice from that end. The other piece I do think for us, locally, which is going to be important, we are looking at this as an opportunity to bring in more national events. We want to have an NBA All-Star weekend here. We want to have an NHL All-Star weekend. Those are really week-long events. I mean, having a new modern building, certainly opens up those opportunities. So we want to be a catalyst for, the travel and tourism, business to really come back to this Penn Quarter District. And we're going to work in partnership with the city to make that happen.
There was talk when the Virginia plan came out about partnering with the convention center on some stuff. Will the renovation, even though you will now have 81 or 82, 82 home games to and hopefully some playoff games, et cetera, on the calendar, is there still those types of possibilities that could exist with the re-envisioned version of this building?
I think so. I think one of the exciting things about this is we've really, rejuvenated our partnership with the district. And I think we are, excited and open to having conversations. I mean, we still have the craziness of having three main tenants in the building between the Capitals, the Wizards, and Georgetown. So, we'll have to get creative on that end. But as we expand this footprint, maybe there's ways for us to, annex off certain areas of the building to allow for, some overflow from the convention center and events and programs they're doing there. So I think we can be creative in this, as we move forward. But if we can certainly be a catalyst for the city to bring in more events, that's a good thing for all of us. So, I do think this partnership really strengthens that collaboration between, us at Monumental and the city in a really robust way. So those are some of the exciting things to come. I will say it's probably a couple years away because we are going to be under construction for quite some time. And, the other piece I should tell you, one of the things I'm excited about is this partnership for us is going to have a couple other foundational partners for us. Gensler is our architect. They have a huge sports practice. They're a DC-based company. They've done some of the most iconic, transformations of renovated buildings and new buildings in our business. So we're going to partner with them on it, along with Clark Construction, which is a Bethesda-based company that, has done some of the biggest construction projects out there. So, we feel like we've got great alignment all around, and I think we've got a good partnership ahead of us.
So a couple more quick ones for you, Jim. The Southeast DC site, which is currently the Wizards practice facility, you guys gain control of that building now. What does that ultimately mean? And also what possibilities are there for expansion out there?
I think that's in the early stages. I mean, I think for us, we think women's sports, and we've been very, open about this, we think is growing and, ascending at a really great rate. I think in time, this allows us to get more room for, our teams and the athletes from that standpoint. We're going to continue to play a lot of Mystics games and go-go games there. So we want to bring more events to, that community overall. But, we do think that was an important conversation point. And, I know the city, really wants us to continue to, perform well at a high level on the basketball side with the Wizards. So I think, the opportunity for us to look at a future, site, whether it's here at Gallery Place or some other locations in the district, to grow a Wizards specific only training facility was one of the important conversations that we had. So I think we're really all aligned. I mean, we want to, continue to bring events to the ESA. We want to continue to make that a great facility. And I think, having a little bit more, management certainly can help, I think, all parties from that standpoint. So, we were excited about that piece of it. And, I know that was really important for the city too, as we were having conversations.
Last but not least, kind of the big overhanging question about it, whether it's your deal or any deal like this in any city, is you have people who rightfully point out that this is $515 million going to a very large company that is owned by a billionaire, and the city has X, Y, and Z problems, and certainly that is true in DC as it is in many cities around the world. Then ultimately there's like a social and civil responsibility piece to this that I know you guys think about. So if someone were to approach you and say, Jim, like, why are we giving you $515 million? How are you guys going to give back to the city to make it worth it for us as taxpayers, us as citizens? How do you what's your answer to that question?
So my biggest thing is, and I think it's a fallacy out there. I mean, sports teams and venues drive commerce, and you know what? I think we are helping to, revitalize a neighborhood. I think we're a destination spot for many other businesses and opportunities for growth in not only this neighborhood but also, the city itself. So, I do know there's a little some investment from the public on that piece, but we also are investing a lot from a private standpoint, all with the same common goal of really making this place a driver of economic development. And I think that's what this partnership aligns very well in from that standpoint. So I do know, when you look at every other jurisdiction, I mean, whether it's the teams in Maryland have gotten public dollars to help support, some of the other teams in DC have gotten public dollars to help support, because I do think that these are drivers of economic development. So it has to be a joint partnership. If it's not a joint partnership, I don't think it's going to have the end common goal that we all want to accomplish.
Jim Van Stone, president of Monumental Sports and Entertainment on the business operations side, very generous with his time here on a very busy day amongst a very busy time. Jim, thank you so much. Always appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Craig. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the coverage and support and what you do for us at Monumental. And you do an incredible job. So we love your show and continued success.
Appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
This is the Hoffman Show on the T980 and the Odyssey app.
Number 2, off we go here on the Hoffman Show. Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And just after 5 o'clock, it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
And joining us is our pal Ben Standig of The Athletic. We're going to go around all of the top stories. Ben, pro days we got going. We got how this DC news yesterday affects the Commanders. So first of all, pleasantries. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. Glad to be back with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into specifically how this news affects the Commanders, like you're a DC sports fan, someone who's covered all these teams in town for a long time and grew up here and like has thoughts beyond just being a reporter. What's your reaction to the news that the Monumental teams are staying in DC?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I definitely was on the side that felt that while understanding the cap one could use some sprucing up, that it just made a lot of sense for fans and certainly for the city to keep those teams there. A brand new building would certainly be fun, but just from the start, this whole thing just didn't seem like it was a well constructed idea. So I think it's a good thing overall that it worked out the way that it did. I wish, whatever. I mean, I just think it's a good thing for DC. I do think it brings an interesting view, though, of what happens next with the Commanders. But just in terms of that, I just think being, arenas and stadiums in the city, just, the vibe, and it just works so much better than being out in the burbs. And not that the Alexandria thing was like the burbs per se, but just, city limits or something to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what does this mean for the Commanders as much as you can tell in their pursuit of RFK?
Well, look, obviously there's, one hurdle has been eliminated with Congress, agreeing to, turn over the rights to the RFK site to the city, and we'll presume that the Senate will do the same, and the president signs off on it, and then it gets to D.C., to the D.C. government. I obviously RFK has the nostalgic in its favor that people want it to be there, and possibly even Josh Harris, who obviously grew up here, and that would be a huge deal. It was a huge point for DC to, if all these things go into place. The problem is, the way I see it, going back a ways ago, there seemed to be some objections on the DC Council to, spending the kind of money needed to bring in a new stadium, everything that it would cost to spend. And that was before they just agreed to put in $515 million over 3 years into the Capital One site. I just wondered, is there really, look, you come up with money all over the place, but come up with different taxes and other ways to create the money, but I really wonder now if they're going to have the money / the stomach on some level to get this done. I kind of think that I've had Maryland as the favorite from the start, home field advantage, as it were. That Maryland is already, trying to create a Navy Yard type feel for in that space around FedEx Field. They obviously own the land, they have the land, all that. To me, feel like this may have even put Maryland, at least for me, even more as the favorite, because of, I just don't know where DC is going to be at with spending even more money. And when we spoke with Josh Harris at the owners meeting on Tuesday, I asked him, hey, you're obviously paying attention to Monumental here. What do you think? And, he said, needless to say, that they're tracking it, that it could affect them. He also said in another answer that, while they're waiting to see what happens at RFK, they're already having, deep discussions with Maryland, because they can't, they don't know what's going to happen. They got to move forward with their own situation one way or the other without knowing whether DC or Virginia is going to get the Monumental team. So I just think yesterday was probably a good day for Maryland, unless, I guess there's a world where this is just a done deal. They wanted to go to RFK and we'll do whatever it takes to get it there. But I really do kind of wonder if DC is going to again, have the money and have the stomach to want to go see this all the way through at this point.
So the money part to me is the most interesting because to me that's where just I'm talking, the way my brain is working here. I haven't done any reporting on this. You have, so if I'm wrong, like by all means, tell me. But to me, it's they want to be in DC, no doubt. That much I do know. That much I have done the reporting on. The team would like to be in DC if they could make the rest of it work. And they have the money in that ownership group if they want to make the rest of it work, even though DC probably is not in a position now to give them as much money as they were 3 days ago before they pledged this money to Ted and Monumental. So I guess the question I have here, Ben, is like, what is the stomach for Josh Harris and his partners to do the majority, if not all, the funding here, if it means they would be able to be the people that returned the Commanders to RFK?
Yeah, I think to me that's kind of the wild card here. Obviously the financial wherewithal that Harris and his partners have, and whether it's their own or to access money, I'm sure they can get it done if they want to. But yeah, they just spent $6 billion to buy the team. So I don't know how much more they want to put in for this. Whereas we don't know the final numbers for any of these jurisdictions, what they would be willing to put in. But for Maryland, obviously they would like to keep the team. They've already shown a willingness to invest in the pro teams in town, including the Ravens and the Orioles up in Baltimore. I mean, in state, I should say. So they're clearly willing to do it, and they've been pretty open and aggressive in saying, hey, we want to get this done. I just don't know that Harris, if Harris wanted to be at RFK that much. Yeah, I think that's a huge question: is how much money are they really willing to put into this? It would be a massive feather in his cap to be the guy who brought the team back to the city, but at the same time, money talks, and I don't know how much they're going to do. And you factor in what Harris has so many other projects going, including trying to build a new 76ers stadium or arena in downtown Philadelphia. So he's got that project going on as well. These things may all be very separate and different pools of money, but it's all connected to him and his various partners. So I don't know. Like I said, I think to me, the Maryland situation seems like it's got a lot more going for it in that regard, but DC, perhaps they can surprise us. I'll just to sort of tie this back into the Wizards and Caps situation, though. Like, I remember way back when, even back when Dan Snyder was still owning the team, it felt to me like the DC may be like taking their eye off the ball. Well, I guess maybe not so much with Snyder because they weren't really interested then. But once Harris got involved, it felt like they maybe were taking their eye off the ball a little bit because we knew that Leontis wanted wanted money for that for that arena, and they were really focused clearly on the Commanders, which I think we all understand. I imagine, this is just my guess, but that they were hoping to lock in the Commanders for RFK and then come back to Leontis, and instead, obviously, it's gone the other way. And now that they've put that money up front, I think that's I don't know how much more they're going to be willing to do. So yeah, I think like you said, how much is Harris really willing to invest? It's a great question, but I think Maryland, like I said, it continues to make more sense to me.
Yeah, the other thing, and I'm spitballing here, is I wonder how much more the team is worth if it's got RFK. Like, if you're Josh Harris and you get a plus $500 million on your net worth if your stadium is at RFK versus Landover, well, that's, I don't want to say like $500 million in free money. That math doesn't exactly math that way. But like, how much, you use the word invest there. And I really wonder, like, and again, I'm spitballing. I have no idea what these answers are. And so maybe someone with an economics degree is listening to this going, Craig, you sound like the biggest idiot that has ever spoken into a microphone. And I'd be like, well, that's not the first time, economics man. But point being, like, if you've got more value being in place A than place B, how much more willing are you to take that on the front end, even if place B is willing to give you more money? And considering we don't know any of the numbers right now, I don't know if you have any more insight or anything you'd like to add to that calculation, but that is a thought that I have with this on top of the feel goods and the tradition and all of that.
Yeah, no. And yeah, I don't know the numbers. Another part here to consider is, at some point here in this process, they're going to build a new practice facility as well. There's some notion, hey, could you do it all in one space? I don't know if the RFK site would be big enough to do all that, even if they wanted to. But when we asked Harris the other day about this, he said he didn't feel that necessarily the practice facility in the stadium needed to go in the same place. I think keeping it in Virginia, there's some financial incentives to doing that. And, if you do separate them, you could create a bit of a mini city at the practice facility, similar to what the Cowboys have done at their place. So there's a lot of different ways to go to sort of, build up the overall investment, to generate more revenue, to increase value beyond just the stadium, even if that's obviously the main attraction. So yeah, I don't know what RFK would mean for the value of everything versus staying in Landover. Clearly, there's more cachet. Roger Goodell, NFL commissioner, was asked about this the other day, and he clearly sounded like a guy who would like to have for the league to have a stadium in the nation's capital and for everything it could do, possibly including a Super Bowl. But you got to have a partner to do it. And again, not to keep repeating myself, but we'll see if DC is going to be willing to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Ben Standing of The Athletic with us. I'll just say this to wrap us up on this, and then we'll get to some football with these pro days happening. But they will keep something in Virginia. You mentioned the financial incentives. It might be a business office where like 28 marketing people work. But if you have something that can be written up in law as a headquarters in Virginia, they keep their casino license and their sports betting stuff. So that's a big financial incentive for them to have something in the Commonwealth. But I know there's a lot of pull to potentially pull the practice facility to Maryland, Sutherland, and Ashburn. So as Ben said, we'll see. The big other story in terms of the football team part of the operation right now is, of course, pro days happening. They were at LSU's yesterday. They're at UNC's today watching Drake Maye do his thing. What are you hearing about how these days are going and the Commanders' oversized presence in them as the team with the highest pick between Knicks, Chicago, knowing they're going with Caleb Williams?
Yeah, obviously we get to watch the throwing part on TV. So, it's fun to see these guys on cork passes down the field and, they're interacting with their teammates. And, I don't really think for the most part, the performance parts matter. I mean, unless somebody is just a train wreck, it's really probably more about, getting the chance to talk to the player more. They met with these guys at the combine. This is the next part of that. Watch how they interact with their teammates. If they do have a bad throw, what's their demeanor, things along those lines. And, as we've all been discussing, this team has been keeping everything pretty close to the vest in terms of what they're thinking and so on. The Drake Maye, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy aspect is really, continues to be fascinating. There are a lot of people who have, very strong pro and cons opinions in all directions. We heard a lot of J.J. McCarthy talk, obviously, over the few days. Is it a coincidence that his pro day was towards the end of last week, leading into the owners' meeting? Perhaps, perhaps not. Recency bias, what have you. And now these guys are, Daniels and May go on back-to-back days. I didn't get much sense that anybody did anything particularly negative to hurt them in any direction. So, I think this is just all more pieces of the puzzle. I don't think these are anything that's declarative. I think these pro days are probably better off for the guys who were not paying attention to the mid-round undrafted free agent types who get to show off some of what they can do to these scouts. But it's part of the circus that happens every year with the draft. And again, I don't get the sense that anybody had any terrible marks, but I would be surprised if anybody changed minds too much based on anything they did on the field.
So the comments this time of year are always hilarious because people want us to say nothing and just fast forward to the draft. And I'm like, that actually, believe it or not, sounds amazing. But I do have to do this job every day. I do have to talk about something every day. And so we take the time to have a little fun and explore the different possibilities of what about this trade? What about this player? What are the pros? What are the cons? And we beat these topics to death because that's what happens this time of year because we can't bend time and space. But as someone who covers this day in, day out and has whatever journalistic responsibility you feel to yourself and your employer, Ben, what actually are you paying attention to this time of year as we pass the time between the end of the college and NFL seasons and the draft? Like, what to you actually matters? Like, who could say something that you'd be like, oh, I actually care about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to get as well. Okay, I just came up with this analogy off the top of my head, and this is a weird one, so bear with me. Did you watch?
Let's
did
go.
You read
Here
the
we
Harry
go.
Potter? Did you read the Harry Potter books or watch the movies or any of those things?
Yeah, I read the books and have seen the movies. I think between the books and the movies, I've seen it all. So yes.
So they play this game of Quidditch, right? And like the whole point is, if you catch this golden snitch thing that's flying around, you win the game. Except that while that's happening, they're also playing a separate game where like there's this bigger ball that they're all chasing around and they're whacking each other with it, trying to get it. And I've never understood what was the point of that. Is it so in case nobody ever catches the other ball? Because once you get the other ball, the other game is completely irrelevant. So my point is that talking to as many scouts as possible, talking to as many people around the league as possible to get their views, because they got to get some opinion here. If the Commanders aren't talking, then that's all interesting and it's good. It's good intel, but it doesn't matter ultimately, because all that matters ultimately is what does Adam Peters think. 28 people could tell me they think Jaden Daniels is great, but if Adam Peters is a Drake May guy, then none of it matters. So obviously you try to do as much homework as you can and try to get a feel for what's real, what's not, and you do hear some things sometimes you're like, I don't know, that doesn't make a ton of sense. Or sometimes you're like, boy, okay, I get that. This source has been a pretty straight shooter in the past. But, again, at the end of the day, it's, Adam Peters casing the golden snitch. That's really, or the organization, whether it's at Peters or Dan Quinn or Kingsbury, whoever's ultimately going to be the one that sort of, pushes it in a certain direction. That's what matters. And, to their credit and to the detriment of those of us who want to speculate, it's been pretty quiet, as we know. So I don't know if that analogy works, but, that's it's all interesting, and you're really, you're all curious. But again, you can talk to people about these guys, and some of them are really positive, some of them are negative, and it's interesting. But ultimately, I don't know if any of it matters until we hear what Adam Peters wants to do.
I think that's a wonderful analogy. Now I really want to someone's going to have to call into the show or leave a comment on the YouTube stream or whatever on what the hell the other part of Quidditch is, because you're right. Whoever gets the snitch, you win. But was the snitch maybe worth a certain number of points, and could you have an insurmountable lead? I don't know. We'll figure that out another day. We don't, I think, need to spend extra time on it. But what I do think, like the chasing of the other score, it becomes interesting is after the pick 3 years from now. If all of a sudden you go back and it's like, well, everyone said they should have taken player B and they took player A, chances are that the GM that made the against the grain decision might be out of a job, or the coach that pushed that might be out of a job. So I don't want to say it matters none, but for the piece of information that we all want to know, which is who's the quarterback that we're going to be watching the next 3 to 5 to hopefully 10 years, I think you're 100% right that it really only matters what happens, 4 weeks from now in Detroit? Yeah,
ultimately. And, I think also, what is happening now as we certainly we've heard a lot of rumors about what, speculation, what might happen. These guys are just not even, what they're saying. And I think it makes sense. They're just not done yet. There is a month to go before the draft. Why would you, let's just even say you had a strong inkling. Why would you say, yeah, we're good now? You still have plenty of time to sort through, to talk to more people, to, contemplate other scenarios, to, is a trade down a possibility? I would think you'd want to consider that for a variety of reasons. There's no point in declaring anything. And the fact that they are being, as quiet, as cautious as they are, sort of makes it, makes it even, even harder for us. I think the one thing that is curious is that every year there's these, players that we're hearing are going to be picked pretty high, and it doesn't happen. Will Levis last year, Malik Willis before that. Is that what's going on here with J.J. McCarthy, or is it that, as often the case, the public is only catching up to where the league has been? And I started hearing about J.J. McCarthy being more impressive than people think, over a month ago. So that's the part that gets interesting. Will we at draft day be like, oh, okay, enough people were just snowing us that, player X was going to be picked as high as they were, and then they weren't. That could happen. So I think that is probably maybe the part that is the most interesting about what we're hearing now, but that doesn't necessarily, again, have anything to do with Washington's view of these quarterbacks.
Yeah, I was about to actually ask you that, and we can keep it like the 10-second version of the answer because we're out of time here, and I've abused enough of your time. But like, if you had to guess, do you think, because beyond the Washington stuff, you're so plugged in around the league, do you think the McCarthy thing is real? Like, is this due to top 10 pick, or do you think people are just blowing smoke?
I've had too many people with seemingly no connection, unless they're all like, playing a game. Okay, today, here's the talking point.
Yeah.
J.J. McCarthy.
Full standing. We got him.
Right. I mean, and obviously it's not just me, right? Pelissero's saying McCarthy, other people are putting McCarthy high in their mock. So it just feels like there is something real, but it's, we'll find out soon enough.
Matt Miller at ESPN had him top 10 in his first mock in January. And I was like, what? And then the more I've watched him, and Logan's had the same thing, like the more you watch him, you're just like, oh, I get it. I understand it. He's really good. So we will see. Ben Standing writing about it all at The Athletic. Great stuff as always, sir, on all fronts. Really appreciate your time, and have a great weekend.
Great. Glad to hear your voice. Glad Anthony is, still over there. Hasn't gone off on the deep end, in his world, whatever that means. So we'll talk soon.
I'm not so sure that he hasn't, but we can cover that a different time. Thank you. That's yeah. All right. That's Ben Standing with us here on the Hoffman Show. Anthony, you all right over there? You doing good? You hanging in there?
How did I catch a stray?
I don't know. Ben maybe do it. When we get back, speaking of catching strays, ooh, buddy, it's time to go into the comments. We didn't get a chance to do it yesterday with the breaking news, but Never Read the Comments is next. The Hoffman Show. We are live on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Back half of the show, although actually technically, Anthony, we are already over the halfway mark because we are giving way tonight, not to Wizards basketball. No. We are going full Monumental. We're making the switcheroo because the Nationals are currently playing right now, opening day. We got the Caps here on the Team 980 tonight. 6:45 is your pregame. Love that. Love a little John Walton on the Team 980. Anthony, you pumped up?
I am indeed.
All right, that's good. We're not gonna have John on, and we didn't make like a whole special open because this is gonna be a rare occasion. Although we will get a couple as we have the Nats Caps crossover here in the next couple of weeks. But then it's you know what time it is, Anthony. After that.
After that, we will be having 7 p.m. shows every day until, I guess, the start of football season.
I mean, until basketball season, unless there's a random. I don't know why the Nats wouldn't be on the fan. We would we're done. We're done, bro. It's 7 o'clock season.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
7 o'clock season is what we're calling it, and we're gonna go all the way to 7 o'clock every day until the Wizards start back up again and the colleges start back up again.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to work a full shift every day?
Exactly.
We're just a bunch of hockey players trying to get our minutes out there on the ice. Full shift. Coach, what do you mean? What do you mean we're not going back out there? What do you mean? We got other guys that got to do stuff. No. We got content to create. We got opinions. We got takes we got to get off.
Okay.
We got interviews we got to do.
Okay.
We got comments we got to read.
Tell me more, Craig.
That was actually your cue to hit the button.
We tried to warn them. They didn't listen.
Yes!
Every week, the Hoffman Show goes into the belly of the beast.
We read those comments, baby.
Never read the comments.
Oh man, the deeper we get into giraffe silly season, Anthony, the wackier some of these comments are getting. But we appreciate them, every single one of them. At Craig Hoffman, at the Team 980. We cut up the show into pieces and we post the highlights at those places on YouTube. You leave comments on them, and then we read them here on the radio. Typically Wednesdays, but this week with the breaking news yesterday, Thursday at 5:30. Any further questions, Anthony Haney, before we begin?
No.
Okay, that's good. So one of the always super fun segments that we do each week, speaking of, is Vibe Check Tuesday. We did, by the way, Anthony, get a question. Who was that question from? I put this later on the rundown. I'm going to read it now. Justin's commented, he goes, "Hey, Craig, this might be a stupid question, but I always miss these. What time should I call?" That's not a stupid question. If you don't listen to the show every single day, like in your car, and you're more of a YouTube person or your Odyssey app or whoever, and you listen on demand, you might not know that 4 o'clock on Tuesdays is when we do Vibe Check Tuesday. So now, who knows? If we get a Justin calling in next week, Anthony, you're going to be like, are you the Justin who left the comment who now knows when to call in?
Yep, I got it.
We take calls at other times, but on Vibe Check Tuesday. But there are some folks, Anthony, that don't seem to understand how this whole radio show thing works. Chris Mahoney, 5668, says, "Why are you going to ask people to call into the show and ask who they want to draft and then argue and debate them about their pick? WTF is that?" And then this, can't make this up. It's too stupid. Free Speech 2975. Yep, Free Speech 2975 responds, "That's always what he does, bruh." Which is always my favorite. Like, I don't actually read the comments. They're talking about me in front of my face. It's how it would be like, "Damn, that Anthony Haney, he's really got a purple sweatshirt on." For those listening on the radio, Anthony's wearing a purple sweatshirt. I see the comments. You don't have to talk like I'm not here. Anyway, that's always what he does, bruh. And he doesn't even let you continue making your argument either. He has his mind made up that Drake Maye is the better prospect and he has no room for debate. Doesn't make any sense. Anthony, you listen to this show more than literally anybody because you're a part of it. Would you say that I've had my mind made up that Drake Maye is the best prospect of the three remaining non-Caleb Williams category? That I've made my mind up and I have no room for debate?
I don't think so. It's sort of kind of, I mean, you make the argument for everybody, like, often, like.
Yeah. I sometimes am the debate within myself.
Yeah.
I don't even need the callers sometimes. I can't make up my mind on these guys. I've been very open about that. But I think some people get pigeonholed into, hey, if I had to pick one, I'd probably lean Maye, which is where I was for a long time. And I guess I don't know where I am right now. Where I am right now is confused because there's just certain things that I can't get over with Drake as a prospect and with JJ and with Jaden. There's just certain things where I'm like, I don't know. But I don't have to make that decision. But point is, I don't know if y'all know how the radio show works, but yes, people call in and we don't just let them talk and then go to the next caller. There are radio shows to do that, and they're terrible. The whole point is that we have a discussion and we have a debate, and it's fun, and the entertainment is in the debate. So yes, when you call into the show, or for instance, you leave a YouTube comment on this section, or on for this segment, we then have a debate about the opinion. That's how the format works. I didn't think I needed to explain that, Anthony, but now we have an explanation that we can send people.
I guess you have to do that.
Wild to me. Anyway, let's get into some non-ridiculous comments that was just left me with the, huh? Like, if I could turn my face into the melted face emoji and just be like, That's how I felt reading that comment. Anyway, some comments on the quarterbacks themselves. I think this one was about J.J. McCarthy. Certainly, we talked about all of them. But we were talking within the course of the discussion about game managers versus big baller playmaker types. And Mr. P718 says, I don't get it. I'd rather have a game manager that takes you to the Super Bowl than a quote-unquote generational talent that barely gets into the playoffs. This I also don't understand. And this is something I think that people are assigning to McCarthy. Also, if you don't think J.J. McCarthy can be a playmaker, like, you just haven't watched J.J. McCarthy. So, like, a lot of people, I think, on McCarthy are telling on themselves right now that they just haven't watched the kid. That they see someone that they think looks like a milquetoast white kid, NFL, like, went to Michigan, played in a run-centric offense. And I'm like, go actually, like, yeah. Does he have some bad tape in there? Of course. Of course he does. But go watch the tape. He's really good. And he's got a really good arm. And he can make plays off platform. And he can run, like really run. And his arm talent is, frankly, better than Jaden Daniels, which is really weird because he doesn't throw as good of a deep ball as Daniels. But don't get it twisted. Those two things are not the same. Anyway, the point is, game manager has become this very silly thing that we downgrade. And the thing is, because the game the term was initially used to be nice about guys that weren't that good. And then it got applied to guys who actually were pretty good and can go win you games, but maybe played within systems where coaches were smart enough to not ask them to more often than any quarterback should. So yes, would it be awesome if you could get a Patrick Mahomes, who you can put the entire game on 17 weeks a year and then 4 more playoff games and walk away with a ring with? Yeah. But you want to know who else can do that? Nobody. So someone who's really effective within any system and can make throws even though they don't have the whole game on their shoulders and they might not be able to keep a rhythm. Like, I look at that as a positive. And people want to say, like, oh, well, if JJ was better, then Harbaugh would have put more on him and they wouldn't have leaned so heavily into running the football and whatever. And I'm like, they won the bleeping national championship. You can't tell me they could have had a better team strategy than winning the bloody natty. What are you talking about, you buffoons? They have scoreboards. JJ McCarthy did his job. They also have tape. The tape for him is very good. That's not to say that he should be the pick. That's not to say that he's a higher upside prospect than Drake Maye. It's not to say he's a more explosive runner or anything than Jaden Daniels. I'm not saying anything crazy here. It's just like some of the arguments that people make, just say you don't watch. Just say you don't have any idea, if you do watch, what you're looking at. That would be more intellectually honest. That got a little high and mighty for a second. Maybe I expect Linnell to pop in any second now. Anthony be like, that was the thing I was saying about the ego. This segment sometimes becomes me at my worst.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm like, save me from myself. Anthony, we should just dump the entire we're going to start the segment over. 10 minutes, me just railing against people. I don't know. Maybe this is what it's for. It's only entertainment. All right. Like Samuel Anderson. Samuel Anderson, 85-19. I recently watched some more film on J.J. McCarthy and came away pretty impressed. He's definitely better than Maye and is more worthy to be in the same conversation with Williams and Daniels. Right now, J.J. McCarthy is better than Drake Maye. I think the thing that you have to not worry about, the thing you have to consider, and the reason why this is so bleeping hard is because Drake Maye's upside is the highest. He's got the best arm. He's got the best prototypical size. He's a fantastic athlete, all that kind of stuff. And when you watch him, I was texting with someone in NFL media circles this morning, and we were texting about Maye and Daniels and McCarthy. And I said, Maye scares me because the footwork stuff is so inconsistent. And he goes, well, he didn't trust his O-line. And I think that really affected how his feet were and his accuracy and all that kind of stuff. And my response was, if I was him, I wouldn't have trusted my line either. They weren't very good. So I understand that. And I think that's part of the thing that you see from the 22 tape to the 23 tape in Maye is in 22, where he was better and had better tape and was considered like right there with Caleb Williams at the top of the draft, he had more trust in the people around him and he played better. 23, he doesn't have the talent around him. And I don't want to say it's a mess, but it's messy with a lot of frequency. And so if I, as a coach, think that I can surround him and as a general manager can surround him with talent and coach out the bad habits from a 21-year-old kid, then I could be looking at a perennial Pro Bowler. And that's really hard to pass up on. And that's why I keep talking myself back into Drake Maye, even though every time I watch his tape from 23, I'm like, no freaking way. Meanwhile, J.J. McCarthy, you watch and he's got everything you could want. He's got NFL linemen in front of him. He's got great receivers. Roman Wilson might be a second rounder. He's got Blake Corum, who's going to be one of the first backs off the board, albeit in the third round. And by the way, he also knew that he didn't have to do a whole lot. So the pressure wasn't as high because his defense was awesome. And by the way, again, that formula worked for Michigan. They're the reigning champions. He also got professional coaching from Harbaugh. But what that translates to is when you watch the actual tape, you don't have to do any imagination. You're like, oh, that's drive. That is a corner out concept. That is dagger. Like, these are NFL concepts. He reads them out perfectly, and he fires bullets in tight NFL windows. What more do you want from the kid? And meanwhile, Jaden Daniels is more ready to play than those two, even though if in the long term, you wonder about some of the arm strength from a velocity standpoint, but he's got the quick release that makes up for it. And now I've talked myself in circles again. This is the conundrum, which is why I might be an absolute bat bleep insane person by the time that we actually get to Detroit, because I will have continued to talk myself in circles, which leads me to this great comment from TWFT 2036 or 236. There is no true formula to this. The kid drafted at Houston, talking about CJ Stroud, of course, was supposedly going to a real bad situation, and look at what happened. Joe Burrow a few years back, so you can cite whatever soothes your thoughts. And that's the other thing, too, when it comes about the development piece. And we're going to have a fun conversation with Bomani Jones about quarterback development tomorrow on the show. Because I know Bo's been tweeting a lot about this and talking about this on his show. So he's going to come on with us tomorrow. But everyone has an example that fits. The high quarterback who failed, the mid-round quarterback who succeeded, the quarterback who sat and it looks like he needed to, the quarterback who didn't sit and was good early and never stopped being good, the quarterback that didn't sit, was good early and then became a failure. Like, there's an example for everyone here, which is why it's also a gigantic crapshoot about who ultimately is going to succeed and fail, especially at the quarterback position, but others too. Logan told a very funny story earlier today on Take Command. Actually, I might try to pull this for real things. I'll see if William cut the audio. I think he already did. But long story short, one of Logan's former coaches sent him an email with like every tight end that played regular minutes in the NFL over the course of like 20 years. And it had their combine scores. And Logan's like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. Like, combine's pro days, right? Logan didn't actually go to the combine. And green is passing. Yellow is, like, fine. Or green is good. Yellow is passing. Red is fail. And Logan just keeps on scrolling down the list. He doesn't know what's about to hit him. But he gets to the bottom, and there's, like, a guy that has played real NFL minutes multiple years in the league that's, like, red. Arm length, bench press, 40 time, red, whatever the metrics were on that sheet, every single one of them was red. And Logan goes, man, I was like, that guy must have sucked. And you don't know who it was?
Logan Paulson.
It was Logan Paulson. Because Logan was so damn smart and got himself with coaches who knew how to use him and was willing to sacrifice his body and be a battering ram, that dude played 10 freaking years, even though he failed every physical metric of a dude who should be able to play one game.
That's hilarious.
Good luck figuring out this stupid league.
Man.
Anyway, 703 Evol X says, Craig, I know you don't necessarily care about this aspect of it, and really I don't either, but can you imagine Josh Harris trying to convince fans to buy tickets while charting Marcus Mariota out there each Sunday? Sheesh, that's going to be tough. They probably should have kept Howell if this ultimately ends up being the plan, and I understand the complications in that as well, so that's a tough one too. I appreciate this comment because I think it touches on something that's actually pretty special about Josh Harris, Anthony, and it's that Josh Harris doesn't give a rat's behind. And this is why we are very lucky that he is also the owner of the Philadelphia 76ers. Because Philly fans, I don't know if y'all have heard this, they're brutal. They think everyone sucks at all time unless you win the whole thing. And so Josh Harris has heard everything you could possibly hear from a fan base as he has tried to rebuild that thing with Joel Embiid and multiple coaches and the whole deal, and they've won 50 games every single year and been in great position, and then Joel gets hurt or something, or James Harden or Ben Simmons forgets how to play basketball or whatever wackadoodle stuff has happened to them, and he just keeps on doing the thing that he thinks is right. So he's going to empower Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury and whoever else is involved in that decision to do what they think is best for the long-term help and maximize the chances of winning a title. And if that means eating crow, or whatever else that you eat, I can't say the word that I want, eating stuff the first couple of weeks or even the first year of this administration because they don't think the kid is ready and they think they're going to do long-term damage, and unfortunately the best they could do otherwise is Marcus Mariota, they'll deal with it. And yeah, would they have probably preferred someone better than Mariota? Of course. But the problem is, if you're way better than Mariota, you're probably going somewhere to start. And they can't guarantee that to anybody. And so they got the best that they could. And, who knows? Maybe Marcus will have a resurgent year under Cliff. Maybe that's a good fit. Fingers crossed. Cirques 1K. If you think this is in response to the Take Command mock draft where, Anthony, we somehow traded back and still got Jaden Daniels. I don't know if you saw that.
I have not seen that. You traded back to where? 4?
We traded back initially to 11, then back up to 6.
And still got Jaden Daniels?
Yeah, for whatever reason, the PFF simulator hooked us up.
Nice.
So we got Jaden at 6, and then we got Layatu Latu, the edge out of UCLA at 23.
I love it then.
Patrick Paul. That was a damn good draft we had.
Yeah.
By the way, Matt Miller's latest mock has Darius Robinson and Patrick Paul going at 36 and 40 to Washington. And if that happens, Logan Paulson will be seen running the streets of Ashburn, waving his shirt over his head. those are probably his 2 favorite second-round guys. But he says, if you think you can trade back and still get Jaden Daniels, are you not saying you think Drake Maye is the better prospect? And in that case, why would we not draft the best QB? I think this is a great question. I actually wish I'd saved more time for it, but I will use a very simple analogy here, which is, let's say Drake Maye, in this case, is a $4 quarterback, right? Caleb Williams is a $5 quarterback. That's the most expensive. You got $4 quarterback in Drake Maye, and Jaden Daniels is a $3 quarterback. If you can just stay at 2 and take Drake Maye, you got a $4 quarterback. That's great. You got $4. But if you can trade back and get a $3 Jaden Daniels and a $2 Layatu Latu or Tyler Guyton, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma, or whatever else you can get with that second pick, let's say that player is a $2 player. Well, now you got $5, because I said Jaden was 3. You got $5. And Anthony, what's more, $5 or $4?
I think 5.
Yeah, that's correct. $5. And even though you have the less good quarterback, you have the better roster. And so you just have to assign that value. And I'm not saying that I think that Drake is a $4 and Jaden's a $3, but that's the premise behind that. If they ultimately, they being Adam Peters and his staff, make that evaluation. All right, a couple quick hitters here. James Taylor, 6051, says Adam Peters says he's going into camp with 4 quarterbacks. Would you prefer another veteran, or would you draft another QB within the first 4 rounds? I absolutely would not draft another quarterback within the first 4 rounds. I would probably just get an undrafted free agent or like a 6th or 7th round guy. That said, there is a part of me that just wants to draft Joe Milton for fun. Did you see his pro day yesterday?
Dude, I saw him throw an 80-yard bomb, which was ridiculous.
That dude threw like an 85-yard bomb and then ran a 4.5, and he's 200 and almost 50 pounds. He is a freak athletically. Like, it's absolutely insane. But the problem is, like, being able to throw the ball 80, 90 yards doesn't actually have a real help in, down in, down out in the NFL. But for fun, and as a battering ram, short yardage back, hire Joe Milton. That's what I want. Last but not least, Anthony, our fun comments of the day. Before we get to more from our interview with Jim Van Stone, president of Monumental Sports, and Mayor Bowser this morning on the Junkies, as we restock or restack the top story of the day coming up at 6:00. We told the story late last week about my recurring nightmare. Remember that? The end of one of our shows? The nightmare that I get that I'm not going to graduate from college, even though I graduated from college 13 years ago. 14 years ago? 14 years ago. No. 12 years ago. Math. Maybe I need to go back and do the math
I was about
classes.
to say, good gracious.
Believe it or not, the nightmare was not about math. But anyway, my brain hurts. I'm not alone, Anthony. I'm not the only one that apparently has this nightmare. The B-Mock 95, I'm 51 and still having this dream. Dink's dad 7751, I have the exact same dream, but it's from high school. I'm 46 and the dream still haunts me at least once a year.
High school is insane.
That's rough, bro.
So almost 30 years. Almost.
Yeah, he's 46. Yeah. I wonder if it is on the same day every year or something. I want to know more about the once a year thing. I just get mine sporadically. But I did it. I graduated. And Anthony, I did send you a selfie with my diploma when I was at my parents in South Carolina.
I can confirm this, guys.
Yeah, I did graduate.
I even learned Craig's middle name.
Yeah, you did. Despite at times it certainly doesn't appear that I did. Why would any accredited university have given me a diploma considering the skills that I showed 90 seconds ago, trying to figure out how long ago it was that I got that diploma? But I did get it. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, you'll hear from Monumental Sports President of Business Operations Jim Van Stone and DC Mayor Muriel Bowser. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up for the rest of the show, we will continue to discuss the news of the day, Monumental Sports, of course. Monumental Sports staying in the District of Columbia. So we will hear over the next 25 minutes or so from both Mayor Muriel Bowser, who was on the Sports Junkies this morning, and from the president of Monumental Sports, Jim Van Stone, who joined us earlier on in the program. Anthony, where do you want to start? You want to start with the mayor, or do you want to start with Jim Van Stone? And then I'll take it from there. But I'm going to give you dealer's choice. I'm really just seeing if you're paying attention over there.
I think we should go with Muriel.
Oh, Muriel. You know my grandmother's name is Muriel.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
It gives me what is the cartoon?
I don't know.
Courage the Cowardly Dog. Did you ever watch that growing up?
I feel like I did, but that was a long time ago.
Oh no, her name was Miriam. No, what? Miriam. Never mind, it was Miriam, not Muriel. Never mind.
Close enough. I think it's one of those names that it's either an old Jewish lady or an old black lady. And Mayor Bowser's not there yet, but in 30 years when Mayor Bowser is an old black lady, then she'll be like, Muriel. It'd be like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So I don't know how her name got cross generations there.
That's a great question.
Or maybe anyway, I don't feel like I'm on the verge of getting myself in trouble. Here is the mayor on how this deal came about, despite the fact that there was a big announcement saying they were going to Virginia 3.5 months ago.
Well, let me just say, we never stopped talking to Monumental. We never stopped negotiating, and we never stopped making our deal an even better deal. So I would say that the culmination of the signing that we celebrated last night, probably started 2 weeks after they're announced. The start, I shouldn't say the culmination, the commencement. We started paving that road 2 weeks or 3 weeks after their announcement about Virginia. So we never, gave up on keeping our teams. We focused on making our deal better, and that's the result.
It is, and I think that the weird thing is, it seems like both sides, even though the Virginia thing happened, it was pretty quick before they were like, let's keep talking. And it's like, I typically hate these relationship analogies, and I'm gonna make it, but let's understand that Anthony, don't look at me like that.
No, I was just listening.
So if you propose, you're not married yet. But if you kept talking to someone else, your spouse probably ain't, or who's supposed to be your future spouse, ain't gonna be very happy, right? And that's kind of what happened here. But here's the thing. This ain't a committed monogamous relationship with the ring. Virginia was like, we're dating! And they didn't actually have, or they even made an engagement announcement, but they didn't have a ring, and they had no path to get to a wedding. They were just like, hey guys, we're engaged. Look at our Instagram shoot. And there's not even a ring on that finger. And that's kind of what happened here. And now we're not going to dive too deep in that analogy because also this is a business transaction. But 2 weeks later, you're already talking to DC. But that is apparently what happened. And I will give credit to both sides because I think ultimately they landed in a good place. I think Leonsis actually talked about this pretty well when he spoke yesterday. He said we're judging this based off outcomes here, and the outcome is it's good. And like process, not great. The outcome, good. And so I asked first Jim Van Stone. The first question I asked him was, did you think when they had the engagement announcement, if you will, with Virginia, did you think that you'd ultimately wind up getting married to DC?
No, I think one of the great things about yesterday's press event, and Ted and the mayor were very clear with it. I mean, even after the announcement of Potomac Yard, we continued to have conversations with the district. I mean, this has been our home for the last 27 years. The memories that we've created in this venue in this neighborhood, I think are second to none. I mean, I think we all go back to the Stanley Cup win and the sea of red that was outside of there. So the conversations always really continued. And, the core of what we needed to really transform the fan experience was more space. And that was the heart of, what we were able to accomplish over the last couple of months with the city. And, this $200,000 square feet of additional space really allows us to transform everything about the building, and that was an exciting moment for us. And, at the end of the day, I mean, the one thing that's great about the district and where we are is that you can't change our zip code. I mean, we're a mile from the Hill, mile from the White House. I mean, it's iconic, location with 3 blocks from the mall. So, the conversations were continuing, from that standpoint. And, at the end of the day, I mean, I think every party is really glad that we were able to come together yesterday with this special announcement.
And it was not without difficulty. And I one of the questions I asked Van Stone is about like what his reaction was when Bowser, wrote that op-ed in the Washington Post. And Bowser talked this morning on the Junkies about how she had to have difficult conversations along the way with Leonsis as it looked like they were about to leave D.C.
We've had difficult conversations, and we were extremely disappointed in their decision. But then we had to go to work. I represent 700,000 people. I represent a downtown that needs its destination, it needs its major anchor, and it needs it to be improved. And that's why we've been willing to be partners in the construction of a new Capital One arena. So people tell me sometimes, you're cool, or you don't get too excited, or you don't get too down. I try to stay right in the middle, even keeled, so that I can do my work. And that's what we did. We set out to, keep our teams and to really demonstrate that Monumental is an important company in the district, and they can be a key part of the next iteration of Chinatown.
So how were the tough conversations? How was the public flogging of Leonsis and Monumental in the Washington Post by Bowser in that op-ed? How was that received on the Monumental side of things? Jim Van Stone with me earlier today.
So I will say, when you're in any of these type of conversations, the emotions really take, precedent over everyone. I mean, I think, we were emotional during a lot of the conversations. I mean, the mayor was sharing her piece. I mean, at the end of the day, I think what she wrote in that op-ed was that she really cared about our teams and this marketplace and doing what's right for the city from that standpoint. So I don't think we regret, any opinion that anyone had in the process. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about finding a solution. And I think we found the solution, but, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say we had emotions internally here at Monumental. So, I mean, there's definitely, some of the pieces, but at the core of, I think, what I mentioned earlier, it's about relationships and keeping those lines of communication open. And, that was the process throughout. I think with both parties, we were all collectively, involved in really productive dialogue. We don't read a lot. I read and follow social media myself, but I don't buy into a lot of, stuff that's reported out there because a lot of it's not factual. I mean, to me, the factual media is, what you do and what, the TV networks do and what we really, share with the overall group. But, there's a lot of pain that comes with some of these things. So, but I think at the end of the day, we were able to work through it. And, I think we've got a great outcome here. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of emotions that go into this whole process.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And there's a lot on the fan side as well. We talked about that in our interview with Jim Van Stone. The full thing you can listen to by rewinding on the free Odyssey app or checking out the Hoffman Show podcast. Definitely recommend the full interview. You'll hear more from it next, though, as we spin this forward where do the teams actually go from here? Where are they going to actually, build in terms of beyond the Gallery Place building, and what are they going to build in there? Like, what does this reimagined Capital One Arena look like? We dove into that with Jim Van Stone. We'll let you hear some of his answers, and also Muriel Bowser chimed in on that as well. All of that next, our continuing coverage of this gigantic story here on the Hoffman Show. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Caps hockey coming up at 6:45 tonight. Nats and O's, I believe, are both done. We've had the O's on here in the studio just because that's what channel was on. Anthony, we've somehow skipped all the what's trendings today, just the way the show has worked. So I haven't even had a chance to look at the scoreboard. How the old Nationals do today?
I think the game is still going. Yeah, it's actually the bottom of the 8th, and it's not looking too pretty.
Oh, that's less than ideal. Yeah, the Nats are down 7-2. So happy opening day.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as the famous Simpsons clip about the Mets, right?
Nope.
It's basically it goes, and welcome to the ballpark. It's opening day here for the New York Mets. Let's go down to the field for the first pitch. First pitch, and the season is over.
That's funny.
We're not quite there with the Nats. The Orioles, by the way, ran rough shot all over the Angels today. Things did not start well because Mike Trout was one of the first batters up. He had the first home run of the the domestic regular season, if you will. Obviously, they played the games overseas a couple weeks ago or a week ago, whatever that was. But yeah, Mike Trout still good at baseball. Orioles still good. Nationals still rebuilding. That is how things are going. Yes, Anthony, you just made a gigantic. Or you were just watching. You were watching SportsCenter. I thought you were watching.
Yeah, I was
something
watching
live. Somebody
on the Yankees completely bomb one.
Okay. You know what we should do? Stay on topic. We're going to get back to our chat with Jim Van Stone and the Junkies chat with Muriel Bowser earlier today. So the obviously $515 million, you can do a lot with $515 million. I sure would like to find out. For Ted Leonsis, he's going to rebuild Capital One Arena, renovate it. The term that Van Stone kept using was they are trying to transform this building. And so here was Mayor Bowser this morning on when, kind of the timeline of how this is all going to go down.
Well, I always believe that the team is ready. Then we can get it done as soon as possible. Our council has agreed to a vote on Tuesday. The money is in my budget, which I'll talk to the council about next week. And I want to be clear about the budget implication. This is a capital project. This has nothing to do with our operating expenses, which much has been said that we have kind of a tight operating environment this year, and we do. But we continue to make investments, and we on the operating side and on the capital side. And what's important about this investment is it's catalytic. It generates more money, it will create more jobs, and it will be supportive of property values and new restaurant starts in all of downtown.
So I think that's actually a really important point from Mayor Bowser and answers one of the key questions that I think people have in general about these projects. And, I would be curious to talk to an economist of whether they believe this is actually truthful or whether this is political spin. But the idea that this is a capital project, not an operational project, that there is a set amount of money that the district and any jurisdiction sets aside to invest, to say, we are going to build things, we're going to do things, and we're going to do this with things that will ultimately make us money in the long run and we think are worth investing in, versus this is the money to have to operate schools and buses and all the other things that a city pays for, which is in a city like DC is quite a bit, to pay public servants, with police officers, firefighters, teachers, all those things are in the operational budget. And my question would be, okay, yes, you have earmarked that money for these two separate causes, but is that money fungible? Is that money that you could say, well, we're going to take $300 million out of our capital budget and we're going to put it in the operational budget, and now we can afford to operate better? And another economist might be like, you could, but that would be very stupid because that $300 million you make to operate better in the short term is going to cost you $800 million in the long term. So you've actually lost $500 million. So there's a lot of economics and math and things that are far beyond my level of knowledge and expertise that I think is interesting. But clearly Bowser wanted to point that out. And I think there, on some level, that's got to be a legitimate answer to that question. As for what they're looking for on the team side, they are ready to go. They certainly know what they want to do. And this is part of what is imagined through the eyes of Jim Van Stone, the president of business operations at Monumental, who will oversee much of this project.
So, it's funny. We talked about Potomac Yard and being 10 to 12 acres of property. I look at Capital One Arena. We have 5 acres of land right now. 200,000 square feet rather, is an additional 5 acres. So we're approaching close to, what we looked at. That's not including the practice facility for the Wizards, which was a big part of, the negotiation with the city on the expansion of that. I mean, we want the best in class NBA practice facility for our athletes. I mean, it's critical and it's important. That's not inclusive of this. We are going to basically look at this as a brand new building within the 4-wall infrastructure and the ability to expand into Gallery Place. That changes the ingress and egress for our clients. That opens up really many more entries into the building. It allows us to pick up a lot of social spaces, a lot of culinary spaces, food and beverage spaces, places for people to mingle so they don't feel on top of each other in a tight concourse. We never had that ability. We think the alleyway and on 6th and 7th allows us to really transition into a brand new entry point. Imagine an overhang, roof of people coming in, staying out of the inclement weather, and then they go into a new pavilion, that could be the Gallery Place Pavilion. I think looking at everything from really event floor level to the ceiling is what's going to be important for us. We do get a lot of demand for people that want really unique seating experiences and premium seating. So we're going to expand that portfolio for us. And we're going to add in premium seating for people in the 4 to 6 to 8 seat range instead of just doing, a suite. We're going to look at, transformational opportunities for guests that are sitting on the 100 level and the 400 level. I mean, they don't have destination spots. The concourses are tight. So, this really allows us to flex out in the building. And then some of that 200,000 square feet, Craig, will probably be repurposed. Some of it will be back of house, but that opens up spaces that we're using for back of house now that have better proximity to, the seating bowl and the concourses and everything from that end. So, at the end of the day, the exterior of the building is going to look completely different. And we want it to be a destination place. We are going to be the engine that basically, really re-energizes, the Penn Quarter district and the Penn Quarter neighborhood. So, we're fully focused on that, and, it's going to be a pride moment. Now, don't get me wrong. The next 3 years, part of my dust. I mean, we're going to have probably construction that's happening and, things that are probably behind the scenes work being done. But we may have some summers where, the building's a little bit more quiet, compared to, normal concert seasons or something like that. So we'll have a 3-year process of the renovation. But I do think what we're looking at is a brand new building, and that's the way we're going to approach the project.
So that is Jim Van Stone on what you can expect from the new Capital One Arena. One thing that I think you'll see is kind of the more modern style of seating where you have a steeper slope in the upper sections, but you also might have more premium options in different spots in the arena. I always am curious, especially like Gamebridge Fieldhouse in Indiana, which we talked about actually in a subsequent answer. Like the way that they have common spaces is great. I don't know how easy it is to do some of the premium stuff they've done in, say, a place like Indiana, though, when it's not just a basketball arena. Like the hockey arena element does change. Like part of the reason that they can do the stuff behind the court the way that they do in DC, currently at Capital One Arena, or they have to do it that way where it feels, I don't know, it doesn't feel quite as nice, to be blunt about it, is because they have to be able to remove that stuff for hockey. And so I think that they're certainly looking at so many of the different arenas, and we talked about that in the full interview. What are some of the model arenas that they're looking at? And some of them are crossover hockey and basketball arenas. So definitely a lot of work to do, but they've been planning for this. They certainly can move quickly, and over the next 3 summers, you're going to see Capital One Arena slowly, but also if it's just 3 years, kind of quickly transform. And then the big question to me is, what do they do with the rest of that space, and how quickly can they get a Wizards practice facility selected in terms of a site, nevertheless built? That is all and more what we discuss with Jim Van Stone, or we discussed all of that and more, I should say, with Monumental Sports President of Business Operations, Jim Van Stone. That full interview is available now on our podcast feed and will be up shortly on YouTube if you'd like to watch our conversation as well. When we get back, we wrap up the show. There was something else, Anthony, that happened during the show yesterday as we were covering that breaking news. I have a hell of a story for you guys next before we close it out with real things here on the Team 980. Anthony, was this an intentional choice?
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow is B-Day.
It is indeed.
Tomorrow, Beyonce, Cowboy Carter drops. By the way, so spoiler alert.
Uh-oh.
Peeling back the curtain.
Peel it back.
1 o'clock today, I talked to Bomani Jones, the host of The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Y'all know who Bomani is. Great friend of the show. Just a great dude. Really always super generous. He's always like, we wrap up, we talk, we talk shop, we tape an interview. He comes on live. He'll hit me and be like, yo, anything else you need, let me know. And I'm like, don't threaten me with a good time. You'll be co-hosting this damn show soon. But Bomani had some really awesome stuff on his pod earlier this week about Beyonce and the Cowboy Carter, the album that's dropping tomorrow. He also had some really interesting thoughts on Twitter about quarterback development. So we chatted for 25 minutes about quarterbacks and Beyonce. So that full conversation is going to be digital only if you want the full stuff. Like if you're like, no, actually I am interested in the music talk as well. Really interesting stuff about artistic courage. Is kind of the theme of that conversation, stepping outside your comfort zone. It's fascinating. So if you want that full conversation, we'll put it in the podcast feed tomorrow. The Beyonce portion is already up on YouTube. I will tell you guys that at Craig Hoffman. But we'll have the sporting portion of the conversation tomorrow for you here on the radio show. Also tomorrow, Clinton Yates stops by for his Friday visit, talking about the Shohei Ohtani controversy and baseball's opening day. What else we got tomorrow? Take Command tomorrow. We had a really interesting quarterback discussion, and also we talked about pro days. Logan told some funny stories about his pro day. Definitely recommend checking out the full Take Command because we're not going to give all of that to you here on the radio. Anything else for tomorrow, Anthony?
Maybe a little Sweet 16.
Oh yeah, we'll probably talk about that. Shape up the weekend on both NCAA tournaments, NCAA action. I haven't even looked at the schedule. What's tonight? What games we got?
I don't know.
Come on, bro. We got Clemson, Arizona, SDSU, Connecticut, Alabama, UNC, and then Illinois, Iowa State.
Yes, that is the game I'm most excited to see. Illinois, Iowa State.
It tips off at 10:09 p.m. You have fun.
Sir, I don't know. Well, maybe. I probably will be. I know you will be probably fast asleep, tucked away in bed. Yeah.
I will be doing the Steph Curry.
Yes.
Night. You see, he hit him last night. What a wild night that was for
Crazy
Steph last
game.
night. Draymond gets thrown out 4 minutes. Steph looks like he wants to murder someone.
Was he crying?
He was just like, there's a look you get with certain people in your life it's not disappointment, it's not anger, it's exasperation. It's what I imagine parenting is like 42% of the time. Just, really? We're doing this right now? And that was the look on like that.
Exasperation worse than disappointment.
Yes, because like you've already been, you don't get to exasperate it first.
Yeah.
You've already been disappointed. You've expressed that disappointment. You've talked about it, and then they do it again. But I also feel like last night, perhaps the Warriors weren't exactly psyched about the refereeing in that situation.
Nope.
So maybe it was more like, I can't believe this directed at the refs, less so at Draymond, because it felt like it was at Draymond, but it might have been the refs. Anyway, somehow Golden State won this game because Curry wasn't even like great. He had 10 assists, 17 points, 10 assists.
It was a low-scoring game,
but it really was. Their defense showed up. I mean, the Magic didn't have – they had Cole Anthony scored 26. None of their starters scored 20 points. So, yikesy on that one. But, yeah, Golden State, big win last night. By the way, Boston, Atlanta, Milwaukee, New Orleans tonight in the NBA. But I promised a story. So, quick story time, and then if we have time, we'll hit real things, real people said, into real microphones. Yeah, because we got a couple funny ones. So, yesterday during the show – we're managing this massive breaking news story, like one of the biggest news stories that we could possibly have. And I get an email from Delta Airlines saying award travel has been purchased on your account as like a confirmation email. And I was like, no, it hasn't. I'm busy working and I have not booked any Delta flights. But I was looking at some flights for a trip that's coming up. And I was like, did I? I don't think so. So in a commercial break, as we're like scrambling to put together guests and like doing all this stuff, I go to my account and sure enough, Anthony, 98,000 miles are missing.
Hold on. You said what?
98,000 miles were spent of my Delta Sky miles.
I don't mean to laugh, but good gracious.
I fast forward to the end. Things worked out. We're fine. We got them back.
So I can laugh.
But 98,000 Sky miles are taken out of my account. Now, I'm about to both criticize and praise Delta. So if Delta's a sponsor somewhere, all our salespeople relax. I go to click the number and it gives me a message option. And obviously I'm during the show, so like I can't call customer service. So I start messaging with them and their messaging service is like, okay, I eventually get through to like the right person to help me, but they need me to verify a bunch of information. And like, I can answer some yes, no questions like during the show, but I can't like go look up my Sky Miles number and do all this stuff. And I was too busy in those commercial breaks, like booking guests that or trying to learn new information. This is all happening, by the way, when the Washington Post story drops. We're having one of the authors of the Post story on. All this stuff is going down. And I'm just like, I just had fraud committed on my account. Like, I need a quick, efficient way to deal with this. So after the show, the second the show ends, I call I eventually like text the person. I was like, I'm almost done working. I'm just going to call. The automated messages were terrible. I wound up getting like hung up. I like hung up. They sent me back to the messaging app. I thought I was going to get a call back. It was a whole deal. So I call them back, eventually sit on hold as I'm driving home. Eventually I get to an unbelievably great customer service rep. So there's a happy ending to the story on top of me getting my miles back, because this dude looks at the transaction on my account and he goes, no, this isn't right. Like, he wasn't concerned that I was being a fraud and that, like, I was trying to pull a fast one or anything. He just, like, he looked at my account info. He looked at the people that had booked the flight, who used their credit card to book the flight. They used their info. Because, like, when you use miles to purchase a flight, you still need to pay, like, some fees. They literally just somehow hacked my Sky Miles. And he's like, that's not your travel companion. I'm like, nope. I don't know who those people are. And he puts the miles back on my account. Guy was fantastic. Shout out to the Delta rep once I finally got on the phone. Delta, please fix your automated messages. And also, I would say if you're any company and you're going to send an email to a customer that confirms a purchase but also has a fraud number, don't let that be a direct line. If I've had fraud committed against me, I don't want to have to navigate your automated menus to undo the fraud. Please just get me directly to a representative that can help me. That is something that is technologically possible. Please, separate number for the fraud alert. Just a friendly recommendation from someone who eventually got to the right person yesterday and found them incredibly helpful. But the stupidest part of all of this, Anthony, is guess where these flights were to and from?
I'm going to say it was to New York.
From?
Oh, I got that right.
Yep.
From New Jersey.
No.
Oh.
From Orlando. How unexciting. You commit fraud to try to go to and from Orlando to New York? And by the way, they flew in and out of different airports in New York. There was like into LaGuardia and out of JFK, I think.
That's different.
I was like, what? None of it made any sense. So thanks to the guy at Delta who got my miles back.
I already got New York right. That is
did.
great. Why New York, though?
I don't know. These are not well people. They're hacking other people's Sky Miles. I'm going to use those Sky Miles to go see my grandmother on Mother's Day. What is wrong with you people?
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
I don't know if this story is new. It is hilarious, so we're going to play it because I found it yesterday on the internet. Jamal Murray with an incredible story about Nikola Jokic, his MVP, all-everything teammate.
I got a funny story about Joker. So we're playing Utah at home, like first game, one of the first few games of the season. And Joker, he's got 47 right at this point, right, against Gobert. And Yo catches, it's a close game too. Yo catches the ball on the block. And they're trying to like send like half help, like trying to send a double team, right? And Gobert goes, no, I got him. So Yoke has the ball. He goes, brother, I have 47. I was like, oh, you're a savage, bro. You're a savage. So I was like, guys, like they're pride. They want to guard 1-on-1, but he has 40. Like, how much do you want him to like? What do you want him to do? What else do you want him to do?
In the nicest way possible.
Brother, brother, I have 47.
That's awesome.
That's brutal.
And also, Jamal Murray's like Jokic impression, like he doesn't really go for it, but it kind of works.
He made it work for sure.
You can hear the Jokic in Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
Brother, I have 47. Like I can't do it. Murray's around him every day. Damn, that's funny. Brother, I'm going to hit you with that at some point. Brother, I have 47. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Bomani Jones, Clinton Yates. See you then on The Hoffman Show.